Hello, everyone. I'm Joana Varon. I'm a researcher on privacy, surveillance, cybersecurity from Brazil, but also following the debates internationally. And then perhaps that's why I'm bringing the dark side of it today, and I'm sorry about that, but we need to think about both to go to the light. So I'm gonna bring some topics, and I'm happy about everything I heard in the first panelists, because in many events in which we go to talk about smart cities, there is a presumption that smart cities is something that is already good, smart is good. And I'll put some questions that we need to think when we think about smart cities. So when we think about smart cities, considering technologies, we might have images imagining the future as something beautiful like that. But those nanotechnologies, micro cameras, super processors are actually being used already and can lead to futures that are more like that, like planetary surveillance drones, people being scanned with all your biometric data to databases in which you don't know the purpose of or why your data is being used, and so on and so forth. Oh, just a second. A little crash in technology. Just restarting the presentation. But so the point that I want to address is that technology is not neutral, and it's actually used and led by human values. And at this point, we are in a point in which we have some questions of the human values. And just a second. Whoa. Here you go. And some values are under debate, as the case here that I'm pointing on privacy. And that's not only due to the uses of technology to the states, but also to the companies. We are becoming more and more the product, while we think we are consuming or using things for free. Our data is being collected, analyzed for profiling purposes. Sometimes it breaches. This is a graphic of data breaches, huge data breaches in different companies around the world. Algorithms are being used in a way that's not transparent. So the way we assess information might not be as democratic as we might think. And there are a lot of issues that have emerged with the internet, though a long time ago when it started, we had this hopeful feeling as some people have when they talk about smart cities. So we need to think today for the internet, this is a map of many UN bodies or outside UN technical bodies. They are trying to address all these challenges, either through engineer communities, either through governments, and they are mapping all the bunch of issues. That's a new initiative that's trying to map what kind of issues we need to address and how. And they have already 80 issues and no specific forum to address them. So instead of the pretty future, we are going to that. So when we think, and we want to go here and not here, I think we need to rethink those core values that are embedded in when we think about how we use and apply technology. And one of the core values that have been framing society has been competition. So people are doing business, are greeting each other, but they are competing. And what we are trying to do at Deep Lab and at Coding Rights, both initiatives that I'm part of, is exactly to shift this logic, to try to work in collaboration through networks to change this mindset that dominates most of the spaces in which we interact. See, private companies, government, even the academy. And those are values that are crashing our democracy, our human interactions, and leading to things that might not help in the smart cities, even if we have the technologies. So, yeah, so it's not only the environment, it's us. We need to think better how to use technology and to benefit from this smartness for public good and not for self-benefit of a few. So to talk about those two initiatives, to talk about Deep Lab and Coding Rights, those are both networks in which we are trying to use co-creation and collaboration as a way to hack the status quo. But not only networks, they are female-based networks, because we also want to empower women working in technology to rethink those values together. So this is Deep Lab, at least the core ladies, but there are many other collaborations. And the purpose here, we debate a lot. It's exactly to try to have a network that works together to be able to have critical assessments of this development of technologies and how it's being implemented. And then we focus mostly on privacy, on surveillance, on hacking, doing hackathons, empowering women, and using art to do critical analysis. So this is one example of some interactions and presentations in the last residency that happened in New York. This first is Ingrid doing an internet infrastructure map, and then she did a tour around New York, so people could remember that internet actually is physical, and we can see that there are places, so there isn't a cloud, and we need to think about that too. This is Adi doing a drone painting performance. These 9 questions were a set of questions in which we put to the audience to think about how your data is being used and can you protect it or not. So they need to put yes or no and very direct questions to be playful also with the audience. And Divorce Your Metadata was a conversation with Flora Poitras and Kate Crawford, exactly addressing the issue of how do you deal with your data. So it's an experiment, and an experiment of new forms of interaction and production to this creative network of women working on digital technologies and trying to re-signify some values, like feminism, like sexism, like privacy, and so on. And trying to highlight all these amazing women that have been working on technology, and sometimes I remember only because they are pretty and are not called to events or panels or whatever. The other initiative that I'm co-founder of, it's coding rights. This part is not working, but it's our organization, also female-led. It's becoming an institution, while Deep Lab is a network. We don't have anything formalized. Coding rights, it's an institution, but it is spread around the world, and we have a collaborative board, no hierarchy, and we engage on different projects according to personal interest, to individual capacities. We don't need to agree every time. That happens as well in Deep Lab, so perhaps I'm saying things here that not all the girls agree, but we communicate and everything, it's fine, because we are focused on the bigger goal and the bigger value, which is to make you all be thinking about some of the questions that I'm popping up out here. And then at Coding Rights, we have been teaching digital security, but what I need to say here is that this is one of the projects in Coding Rights, and we feel that there we are running after the wave, and the wave is passing, and we want to catch the wave, and because it's a bit too late to engage people on privacy issues, on which technologies they need to use. And perhaps now, when we are starting to think about technologies for the smart cities, we can be ahead of it and have these considerations. So another kind of work that I'm doing, this one is through Coding Rights as well, is to go to these engineering forums, like the Internet Engineer Task Force, which is the main forum to debate standards and protocols for the internet, and to debate with the engineers what are the human rights considerations that we can have at the time that you develop those protocols. So what we are trying to do is this kind of translation of terminologies, of engineering terminologies to human rights terminologies, and we are having quite of amazing debates there, and perhaps we could get into a point in which when someone develops a protocol, they'll have to have considerations for freedom of expression and so on. And to finish, so perhaps we could have that when we think about Internet of Things. And there are ways that Brazil is experimenting to do consultations also in collaboration. It's, I don't know, the third time or even more in which Brazil puts a draft bill on public consultation online. This is the draft bill on data protection. So citizens can go there, comment on the paragraphs, and then the executive, that's the one that's normally held in those consultations, will compile it. The data will be open, so we can also compile this analysis that we did based on this public consultation on data protection to check what were the core issues under debate. And so we demand, and we can show then if there was or there was not a transparency when they compile the comments and submit the bills. So I think this kind of collaborative process is possible even for drafting bills. So to finish my remarks here, I think what I try to address is those 3 points. So collaboration, community building, and co-creation tends to lead to better ideas than the logic of competition that's currently dragging us to the future. Technology is not neutral, so we need to collaborate with ethical limits and core human values. And empower diversity is key for a more inclusive result for such collaborations. And of course, with Deep Lab and with Coding Rights, we are trying to empower women in this mix of diversity. And then I would like to invite the colleagues in Ars Electronica to also have considerations about this kind of diversity. Some artists and colleagues of Deep Lab have also pointed that at arts there are some, it's not even close to equality in terms of prices and who has received Golden Nika. We have counted since 2010. It's 20 male over 3 women. So that's also an invitation for this matter to be taken into account here for women in arts as a way to empower as well. So thank you, everyone. Those are my contacts, and it was a pleasure to be here with you.